The Great Hall was silent. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats, watching the center platform where a single human stood. His name was Taiho, and he was the voice of 12 billion people. Today, that voice meant nothing. The Galactic Conclave had existed for 10,000 years. 12 elder species controlled everything: trade, law, war, and peace. They had built an empire that stretched across 1,000,000 stars. And today, they had decided that humanity did not belong in it. Taiho looked up at the high speaker of the Velthory. She was tall and thin, her body made of light and crystal. Her kind had ruled the conclave for 3,000 years. They believed themselves to be perfect. They believed humans to be insects. "The vote is complete," she said. Her voice was cold and beautiful, like winter wind. 9 species voted in favor. 2 abstained. 1 voted against. Humanity is found guilty. The word echoed in Taiho's mind. Guilty of what? Of growing too fast? Of building too much? Of refusing to bow? He remembered the charges. Humans had expanded into territories that the elder species had claimed but never used. Humans had developed weapons that made the old fleets nervous. Humans had questioned traditions that were older than their entire civilization. For these crimes, they would pay. "The sentence is exile," the High Speaker continued. "Humanity will be removed from civilized space. Your colonies will be emptied. Your ships will be taken. You will be sent to the dead arm, where no life exists, where no hope remains. There you will stay until the stars themselves grow cold." Pine Taiho, Admiral Hannah stood with her hands behind her back. She was 60 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen 100 battles. She had fought for the conclave once, believing that humanity could earn its place among the stars. Now she understood the truth. There was no place for humanity here. There never had been. She wanted to speak. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that this was murder dressed in pretty words. But she stayed silent. There would be time for anger later. Taiho stepped forward. The guards around him raised their weapons, but he stopped and simply looked at the council. "You call this justice," he said. His voice was calm. "You call this mercy. But we both know what this really is. You are afraid of us. You have always been afraid of us." The High Speaker's light flickered a sign of anger among her kind. "You overestimate your importance, human. You are not feared. You are simply inconvenient. Then why not kill us?" Taiho asked. "If we are so small, so weak, so unimportant, why let us live at all?" The question hung in the air. The other species shifted in their seats. Some looked away. They knew the answer, even if they would not say it. The High Speaker smiled. At least, Taiho thought it was a smile. "Because we are not monsters, human, we are giving you a chance to survive. Whether you take it as your choice." Session ended. Guards surrounded Taiho and Hannah, leading them out of the Great Hall. Behind them, the representatives of 100 species watched in silence. Some felt pity. Some felt relief. Most felt nothing at all. The exile began immediately. Human colonies across the galaxy were emptied. Families were torn from homes they had built over generations. Ships carried them away from everything they knew, toward a place that appeared on no maps, a place that even the elder species avoided. The dead arm was a graveyard of stars. Ancient suns had burned out long ago, leaving only cold rocks and empty darkness. No trade routes passed through it. No species had ever lived there. It was the end of the galaxy, in every sense. 12 billion humans were transported over 3 years. They were given basic supplies enough to survive. Maybe, if they were lucky. Their advanced technology was confiscated. Their weapons were destroyed. They were left with nothing but their hands and their minds. Hannah watched from the bridge of the last transport ship as civilized space grew smaller behind them. The lights of 1,000,000 worlds faded into the distance, replaced by the deep black of the dead arm. Beside her, Taiho stared at a small screen showing images from the Conclave's news networks. The elder species were celebrating. They called it the purification, the removal of a dangerous element from galactic society. Commentators praised the wisdom of the decision. Artists created works celebrating the peace that would follow. "They think we're already dead," Taiho said quietly. Hannah nodded. "They want us to be dead. They expect us to kill each other, fighting over scraps. They expect disease and starvation to finish what they started. And if we don't die?" Hannah turned to look at him. There was something in her eyes that Taiho had not seen before. Not hope exactly, but something harder. Something sharper. "Then we become something they never expected," she said. "We become their nightmare." The transport entered the dead arm. Sensors showed nothing but asteroids and dead planets. The cold of space pressed against the hull. Somewhere ahead, the first human settlements were being built from whatever materials could be found. Taiho thought about his daughter. Minji, she was only 5 years old. She would grow up in this darkness, never knowing the warmth of a living sun. She would learn to walk on dead worlds, to breathe recycled air, to eat food grown in artificial light. What kind of person would she become? What kind of people would humanity become, forged in this crucible of exile? He did not know. But he knew one thing. They would not disappear. They would not fade quietly into the darkness. The galaxy had cast them out, believing that isolation would destroy them. But humans had always thrived in difficult places. They had crawled out of caves and crossed oceans. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had reached for the stars when the stars seemed impossibly far. This was just another challenge. The biggest one yet, perhaps, but still just a challenge. Hannah gave orders to the crew. The transport found its place among the growing fleet of refugee ships. Below them, on a frozen rock that had once been a planet, humans were already building shelters. Already adapting. Already refusing to die. The galaxy had witnessed their banishment. They had seen humanity brought low, stripped of everything, and cast into the void. But they had not witnessed the end. They had witnessed a beginning. And in 50 years, they would understand their mistake. 50 years passed. The galaxy forgot about humanity. In the halls of the conclave, the name human became a word used to frighten children. They were a cautionary tale of species that had reached too high and fallen too far. Young beings learned about them in history lessons, the same way they learned about extinct creatures and dead civilizations. Humanity was the past. The elder species had made sure of that, but in the dead arm, humanity was very much alive. Commander Jiho stood on the observation deck of Station Prime, the largest human settlement in the exile zone. Through the thick glass, he could see the construction crews working on the new shipyard. Sparks flew in the vacuum as welders joined metal plates together. Cargo ships moved between asteroids carrying ore and supplies. A civilization was being built, piece by piece, from nothing. When Jiho had arrived 50 years ago, he was a young engineer fresh from the academy. He had watched his parents die in the first winter when the heating systems failed and the cold took thousands. He had buried friends who starved when the food supplies ran low. He had seen humanity at its lowest point, and he had seen it rise. The first decade had been the hardest. Humans fought each other for resources. Settlements collapsed. Disease spread through the cramped shelters. It seemed like the elder species had been right. Humanity would destroy itself. But then something changed. Leaders emerged who could see beyond immediate survival. Scientists found ways to extract energy from the dying stars. Engineers built machines from asteroid metal. Farmers learned to grow food in artificial environments. Slowly, painfully, humanity began to adapt. Jiho had led the engineering corps for 30 years now. Under his guidance, they had built 100 stations, 1,000 ships, and machines that the Conclave had never imagined. Without the rules and restrictions of galactic law, human minds were free to explore ideas that had been forbidden. They experimented. They failed. They tried again. And eventually, they succeeded. Dr. Yuna was the head of scientific research. She was born in exile, one of the first generation that had never seen civilized space. Her laboratory was located deep inside an asteroid, protected from radiation and hidden from any possible observers. There she worked on projects that would have terrified the elder species. The new drive is ready for testing, she told Jiho during their weekly meeting. She pulled up holographic displays showing complex equations and ship designs. If it works, we can fold space itself. Travel that would take months will take seconds. Jiho studied the designs. Even after all these years, human innovation still amazed him. The Conclave has nothing like this. Yuna smiled. The Conclave stopped innovating 5,000 years ago. They found technologies that worked and never looked beyond them. They are living in the past, and we are building the future.
Exactly.
On the other side of the dead arm, Captain Do-Yeon led his exploration fleet through uncharted space. His job was simple: find resources. But in 50 years of searching, he had found much more. The dead arm was not as dead as the elder species believed. There were rare minerals in the asteroids that powered the most advanced technologies. There were hidden energy sources that the dying stars produced. There were even signs of ancient civilization species that had lived and died millions of years ago. Leaving behind artifacts that human scientists studied eagerly, Do-Yeon had mapped more of the galaxy than any being in history. His charts showed routes that no one else knew, hiding places that no one else could find. If war ever came, these routes would be invaluable. But not everyone was thinking about exploration. Some were thinking about revenge. Minji had grown up hearing stories about the banishment. Her father, Taiho, had told her about the Great Hall, the High Speaker, and the moment humanity was condemned. He had told her about the journey into darkness, the early years of suffering, and the friends they had lost. Taiho had died 10 years ago, worn out by a life of struggle. Minji had held his hand at the end. His last words to her were, "Remember what they did? But don't let hatred control you." She tried to follow his advice. She really did. But as she rose through the military ranks, becoming the youngest tactical commander in human history, she could not forget. Every battle simulation she ran, every strategy she developed, had one purpose: preparing for the day when humanity would face the Conclave again. Her war room was filled with information about the elder species. She knew their fleet formations, their weapon capabilities, their political structures. She studied them the way a hunter studies prey. She found their weaknesses, their arrogance, their assumption that old ways were best, their inability to imagine that the exiled species could ever return. "It gave us 50 years alone in the dark," she told her officers during a training session. "They thought that would destroy us. Instead, it made us stronger. They should have killed us when they had the chance." Admiral Hannah, now 90 years old, still served as an advisor. Her body was failing, but her mind remained sharp. She watched Minji with a mixture of pride and concern. The young commander was brilliant, perhaps the most gifted strategist humanity had ever produced. But there was a fire in her that worried the old admiral. "Revenge is a poor foundation for victory," Hannah told her one evening. They sat in Hannah's quarters, surrounded by memories of the old world photographs. Medals, a flag from the last human colony in civilized space. Minji nodded respectfully. "I understand, Admiral, but I don't want revenge. I want justice." "Is there a difference?" "Revenge is about hurting them. Justice is about proving they were wrong." Hannah considered this. Perhaps the young woman was wiser than she appeared. "And how do we prove they were wrong?" Minji smiled. It was not a warm smile. "By surviving. By returning. By showing the galaxy that they cannot break us. By making them fear the name they tried to erase." Outside the station, the construction continued. Ships were being built, warships, faster and more powerful than anything in the Conclave fleet. Weapons were being tested, weapons that could disable an enemy vessel without destroying it, demonstrating superiority without massacre. Plans were being made not for conquest, but for something more subtle. The galaxy had forgotten humanity. Soon, it would remember, and it would tremble. The Velthry mining station floated at the edge of civilized space, far from the great centers of power. It was a small operation, extracting minerals from nearby asteroids and shipping them to the core worlds. Nothing important happened there. Nothing ever changed, until the day a strange ship appeared. Station Commander Velith noticed it on the sensors first. The ship was small and sleek, with a design she had never seen before. It did not match any known species. It did not respond to standard communication signals. For a moment, she wondered if it was a ghost sensor error caused by old equipment. Then the ship hailed them. "Greetings," said a voice in perfect Velthari language. "We are traders from the outer regions. We wish to do business." Velith hesitated. Traders from the outer regions? There was nothing in the outer regions except the dead arm, and nothing lived there. At least nothing was supposed to live there. "Identify yourselves," she demanded. A pause. Then, "We are human." The word sent a chill through Veloth's crystalline body. Human, the banished species. The ones who were supposed to be dead. The ones who were supposed to be forgotten. "That is impossible," she said. "Humanity was exiled 50 years ago. They cannot have survived." The voice on the other end seemed amused. "And yet, here we are." The human traders docked at the station. They were polite and professional. They offered technology for sales mall devices that were clearly superior to Conclave standard. Energy cells that lasted 10 times longer. Communication devices that worked across greater distances. Medical equipment that could heal injuries in hours instead of days. The prices were low. Too low. Velith knew that something was wrong. But the other station workers did not care. They bought everything the humans offered. Within weeks, the station's economy was transformed. Workers who had used Conclave technology for centuries now carried human devices, and then the humans left. They did not ask for payment in money. They asked for information, news from the civilized galaxy, data about trade routes, gossip about the elder species. It seemed harmless enough. Velith reported the encounter to her superiors. They dismissed it. A few surviving humans selling cheap gadgets? Meaningless. The Conclave had more important things to worry about, but the pattern repeated. Human ships appeared at a dozen stations, then 100, then 1,000. They never attacked. They never threatened. They simply traded. And everywhere they went, they left behind technology that made Conclave goods look ancient and clumsy. Economies that had been stable for centuries began to shift. Workers demanded better equipment. Merchants struggled to sell products that were now outdated. The careful balance of power that the elder species had maintained began to wobble. General Wujin commanded the human fleet from the Bridge of the Sunrise, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. He watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy with quiet satisfaction. Phase 1 of the plan was working perfectly. "They still think we are merchants," he said to his officers. "They still think we are weak." Minji stood beside him, studying the tactical displays. She had designed this strategy, not a military invasion, but an economic one. Destroy their trade, and you destroy their power. Make them dependent on human goods, and you make them vulnerable. How long before they respond? Wujin asked. Wujin will demand action within the month, Mingi predicted. They are losing the most. Their pride will not allow them to wait. She was right. 3 weeks later, the Conclave announced that human traders were banned from civilized space. Any human ship that entered their territory would be destroyed. It was exactly what Minji had expected. The ban did not hurt humanity, it hurt the younger species who had become dependent on human goods. Resentment grew. Whispers spread. For the first time in millennia, beings began to question the wisdom of the elder species. Ambassador Sora arrived at the Galactic Conclave 6 months later. She walked into the same great hall where Taiho had stood 50 years before. The same representatives watched from their seats. The same high speaker looked down from above. But everything was different. Sora was not alone. Behind her stood a delegation of human diplomats, scientists, and military officers. They wore uniforms that shimmered with advanced materials. They carried devices that the Conclave could not identify. They walked with the confidence of beings who knew they held the power. "You banished us to die," Sora said. Her voice echoed through the hall. "Instead, you taught us to survive without you. Now we have returned, and we do not need your permission to exist." The high speaker's light flickered with anger. "You dare enter this hall? You are exiles. You have no standing here. We have the standing of a species that refused to disappear. Sora smiled. We have the standing of 12 billion people who built a civilization from nothing. We have the standing of beings who surpassed you in every way while you sat in your comfortable chairs and forgot we existed. The conclave erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded that the humans be arrested. Others called for calm. The carefully maintained order of 10,000 years crumbled in minutes. Outside the hall, the human fleet waited. 50 warships, each one more advanced than anything the conclave possessed. They had come not to conquer, but to demonstrate, to show the galaxy what humanity had become. The Velthari responded first. Their flagship, the Crown of Stars, moved to intercept the human fleet. It was the most powerful vessel in the conclave navy, crewed by veterans of 100 campaigns. It had never been defeated. General Wu Jin gave a single order. The battle lasted 18 seconds. Human weapons disabled the Crown of Stars without destroying it. Its engines went dead. Its weapons went silent. Its shields collapsed like paper in a fire. The mighty flagship floated helplessly in space, its crew staring at screens that showed nothing but error messages. The other conclave ships did not advance in the Great Hall. Sora watched the news feeds showing the disabled flagship. The representatives fell silent. For the first time, they understood what they were facing. "We are not here for revenge," she announced. "We are here to offer you a choice. You can accept us as equals, or you can resist and discover just how far we have come. The decision is yours." The galaxy held its breath. The conclave broke apart within days. For 10,000 years, the 12 elder species had ruled together. They had different interests and different goals, but they shared one belief. They were superior to everyone else. The younger species existed to serve them. The galaxy belonged to them by right. Now that belief was shattered. The humans, the banished, the forgotten, the supposedly dead had returned stronger than ever. Their technology made conclave weapons look like toys. Their ships moved in ways that conclave scientists could not explain. Everything the elder species had believed about their own superiority was proven wrong. The Velthari demanded war. Their representative stood before the council, her crystalline form blazing with fury. "We cannot allow this insult to stand. The humans have humiliated us. They must be destroyed, no matter the cost." But the other species hesitated. They had seen what happened to the Crown of Stars. They had received reports of human capabilities, weapons that bent space, shields that absorbed energy, drives that could cross the galaxy in days. A war against such technology would not be a victory. It would be suicide. "Perhaps we should negotiate," suggested the Renathi ambassador, a small being covered in blue fur. His species had always been uncomfortable with the conclave's harsh policies. The humans say they do not want revenge. Perhaps they can be reasoned with. Negotiation is surrender. The Velthari screamed. "We do not bargain with lesser species." "They are no longer lesser," the Renathi replied quietly. "They are greater, and we must accept that truth before it destroys us." The council dissolved into argument. For the first time in millennia, the elder species could not agree on anything. While they argued, Nari was working. She was a human intelligence operative, one of dozens who had been placed throughout the galaxy over the past decade. Her cover identity was a merchant trader, buying and selling goods in the border regions. In reality, she gathered secrets. Nari had spent years building a network of contacts among the alien species. She found beings who were unhappy with conclave rule workers who were treated unfairly, merchants who were taxed too heavily, officials who had been passed over for promotion. She listened to their complaints. She offered sympathy. She earned their trust. Now she was using that trust to reveal the greatest secret of all. The banishment was not about safety. She reported to Ambassador Sora through an encrypted channel. "I have obtained records from the conclave archives. The elder species knew humanity was not dangerous. They knew we could be controlled through diplomacy. But they chose exile instead." "Why?" Sora asked. "Because they were afraid of what we would become." Their own scientists predicted that human innovation would surpass theirs within 2 centuries. They saw our growth rate, our adaptability, our refusal to accept limits. They knew we would eventually challenge their power. So they decided to eliminate the threat before it grew too large. Sora was silent for a long moment. They tried to murder 12 billion people because they were scared of our potential. Yes, and they called it mercy. They convinced themselves it was true. The elder species are very good at believing their own lies. Narration evidence spread across the galaxy. She released the documents to news networks, to independent journalists, to anyone who would listen. The truth was impossible to hide. The Conclave had not exiled humanity for crimes. They had exiled humanity for daring to be better. The response was immediate. Younger species that had suffered under Conclave rule for generations saw the truth clearly. If the elder species would destroy humanity for being too innovative, what would they do to any species that challenged their power? Rebellions sparked on a dozen worlds. Workers refused to serve. Merchants refused to pay taxes. Military officers questioned orders. The careful hierarchy that had maintained galactic order began to collapse. On the Velthari homeworld, protests filled the streets. Not against humanity, against the Conclave. Citizens demanded to know why their leaders had lied. They demanded to know how many other species had been destroyed to preserve elder power. The Velthari High Speaker tried to maintain control. She ordered arrests. She sent troops into the streets. She declared a state of emergency. But her authority was crumbling. Even her own people no longer believed in her. Admiral Hannah, now 92 years old, watched the chaos from the bridge of the sunrise. She had waited 50 years for this moment. She had survived the exile, the suffering, and the long rebuilding. She had outlived most of her generation, and now she was witnessing the fall of the empire that had condemned her people to death. Is this what you wanted? General Wujin asked her. Hannah considered the question carefully. I wanted justice. I wanted the truth to be known. I wanted them to understand what they did to us. And now I want us to be better than they were. She turned to face the general. They ruled through fear. They destroyed anyone who threatened them. We cannot do the same. If we become like them, then everything we suffered was meaningless. Wujin nodded slowly. He understood. Victory was not just about defeating the enemy. It was about proving that you deserve to win. The Human Council met to discuss their next move. Mingyi argued for pressing the advantage. They are weak and divided. We should finish them now, before they can recover. Sora disagreed. If we attack, we become the villains. We prove that they were right to fear us. We must offer peace, not war. Peace with beings who tried to kill us. Peace with beings who can still cause great harm. And peace with the billions of ordinary citizens who had nothing to do with the banishment. They are not our enemies. They are potential allies. The debate continued for hours. In the end, Hannah cast the deciding vote. We will offer terms, she said. Not because they deserve mercy, but because we deserve to be more than weapons of revenge. We will build something better than the Conclave. We will prove that humanity's strength is not just in our technology, is in our ability to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. The decision was made. Humanity would not conquer the galaxy. They would transform it. But first, at one final meeting with the beings who had cast them out. The crystalline chamber looked the same as it had 50 years ago. The seats rose in great circles toward the ceiling. Light filtered through walls that had witnessed 10,000 years of history. The representatives of 100 species sat in their places, waiting. But this time, humanity was not standing alone at the center. This time, they stood with ally species who had suffered under Conclave rule and now demanded change. The Renathi were there, and the Alarin, the dozen others who had finally found the courage to speak. Director Taiho walked into the chamber. He was not the same Taiho who had been condemned in this hall half a century ago. That man had died in exile. This Taiho was his nephew, named in his honor. Carrying the memory of all that had been lost, beside him walked Minji, now the supreme commander of human forces. Ambassador Sora stood at his other side, and behind them came the new generation. Young Commander Heian, who had been born in the Dead Arm and had never seen a living sun until 3 years ago. When human ships first returned to civilized space, the Velthari High Speaker sat in her ancient chair. Her light was dim now. Age had caught up with her, as it caught up with all living things. She had ruled for 3 centuries. She had seen the rise and fall of empires. She had ordered the banishment that was supposed to end humanity forever. Now she watched them return in triumph, and she had no power to stop them. "You have one?" she said. Her voice was tired. "What do you want from us?" Director Taiho stepped forward. The eyes of the galaxy were on him. News networks across 1,000,000 worlds were broadcasting this moment. Whatever he said next would echo through history. 50 years ago, he began, my uncle stood in this same hall. He was told that humanity was too dangerous to exist among the stars. He was told that exile was mercy. He was told that our species would disappear into the darkness and never return. He paused, letting the words sink in. You were wrong. About all of it. We did not disappear. We did not destroy ourselves. We did not become the monsters you claimed we were. Instead, we built something beautiful in the place you sent us to die. We created technologies you cannot understand. We developed a society that values growth instead of stagnation. We proved that the only thing dangerous about humanity was your fear of our potential. The High Speaker said nothing. What could she say? Minji stepped forward next. Her voice was harder than Taiho's, shaped by a lifetime of preparing for this moment. You gave us exile, she said. You took everything we had, our homes, our technology, our place in the galaxy. You left us with nothing but dead stars and frozen rocks. And do you know what we did with that? Nothing. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air, human stations orbiting dying suns. Cities carved into asteroids, ships that moved faster than light. The achievements of 50 years of struggle displayed for all to see. We built miracles, Minji continued. Not because we are superior to you, not because we are special, but because you left us no other choice. You made survival impossible, so we made the impossible possible. Ambassador Sora took her turn. Her voice was calm, diplomatic, the voice of reason in a room full of emotion. We could have chosen revenge, she said. We could have used our technology to destroy you, the way you tried to destroy us. Every military strategist in human space told us it was possible. Every citizen who remembered the suffering of exile would have cheered. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from every species. But we chose differently. We chose to prove that humanity is not the threat you imagined. We chose to offer something better than conquest. We chose to give you a second chance. The terms were simple. The conclave would be reformed. The Council of Elder Species would be dissolved and replaced with a true assembly, where every species had equal voice. Human technology would be shared, not hoarded, not used as a weapon, but given freely to all who wanted it. The galaxy would enter a new age, built on cooperation instead of domination. You feared what we might become, Taiho said. But this is what we have become, beings who could have crushed you and chose mercy instead. Beings who could have ruled through fear and chose partnership instead. Beings who remembered everything you did to us and still offered you hope. The High Speaker's light flickered weakly. And if we refuse? Hyun spoke for the first time. He was young, barely 30 years old, but he carried the weight of a generation that had known nothing but exile. Then you will watch the galaxy leave you behind, he said. Every species that has ever suffered under your rule is watching this moment. They are waiting to see if the elder species can change, or if they are truly the relics they appear to be. Refuse this offer, and you will find yourselves alone. The universe has already moved on. The only question is whether you will move with it. The vote was held immediately. The Velthari voted against, clinging to their pride until the end. 2 other elder species joined them. But the rest, including several elder species and all of the younger ones, voted in favor. The conclave was over. A new age had begun. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to share technologies. Trade routes that had been closed for centuries reopened. Species that had been enemies for generations found common ground. The Velthari and their allies retreated to their homeworlds, refusing to participate in the new order. But their isolation only weakened them further. Within a decade, even they would begin to change. Admiral Hannah did not live to see the full transformation. She died peacefully 3 years after the final confrontation. Surrounded by the officers she had trained and the grandchildren she had helped raise, her last words were simple. We did it. We survived. And we stayed human. Mingy became the first human to serve on the new Galactic Assembly. She brought the same fierce intelligence that had planned the return, now directed toward building instead of fighting. Under her guidance, the dead arm was transformed from a place of exile into a place of pilgrimage, monument to human resilience. And on the hull of the Sunrise, the ship that had led humanity home, Commander Hyen ordered an inscription carved in 100 languages. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see it, to touch the words that had become the symbol of a new era. The inscription read, "They cast us into darkness. We became the light." The galaxy had witnessed humanity's banishment. They had celebrated what they believed was the end of a troublesome species. Now they've witnessed something far more powerful. They witnessed what happens when humanity refuses to die. They witness the dawn of a new age, built not on conquest or revenge, but on the simple, stubborn refusal to give up, and they would never forget it.